lady fellas, F&O Society. Welcome to the Fantasy in Reality Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Tacker. Today in the ridiculously over-decorated studio, we're going to be going over starts and sits for the quarterback and running back positions. So, our first game up, we have the New York Jets visiting the New England Patriots. So, as far as quarterbacks go, you would have to start Tom Brady. It's a no-brainer. He's been doing well, and against the Jets, who have not fared too well against quarterbacks. So Brady would be a start for me. As far as the Jets quarterback situation, with Luke Falk coming in and having to take the duties as the third string, now the starter, because Trevor Siemian broke his ankle last week. It'll be tough for him. I mean, he did look decent and well. He went like 20 for 29 against the Browns defense, but that's the Browns defense who also made Mariota look decently well. So I would probably stay away from Falk just for right now, possibly, and have a little bit more caution toward him going into the rest of the season. So for now, he will be a sit, but later on, he might create more chemistry with his offensive weapons to create better situations for himself. Weapons such as Le'Veon Bell, who will be a start for me. The other running backs there, I wouldn't worry about them. They will be a sit. Lev will be the only starter in New York for me. In the running back position, as far as New England, I would start Tony Michel, even though he kind of had a down week. I think he's going to come back. He'll do what he does. Hopefully, if they get a lead, they'll start running more. I will bench Rex Burkhead. I will also probably bench James White if Antonio Brown plays, with the whole situation with him again still dwindling down into the season. I think it'll be a big old thing. So, long story short, if AB plays, I'll sit James White. If he doesn't play, I could probably put him White in my flex spot. For the next game, we have the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills. I would probably start Josh Allen. He's been doing pretty well, being a little bit more consistent and having a little less turnovers than last year. So, as far as his production, I would be okay with starting him in my league. As far as Andy Dalton, he did well last week. He's been doing okay, but I'm going to be a little bit more cautious with him. And so this week, he'll probably be a sit for me. As far as the running backs go for the game, the only running back that I was starting the entire game would be Frank Gore, because Devin Singletary injured his hamstring. We're not sure how long that's going to linger. So Frank Gore is going to see the volume. And, I mean, even though he's not super crazy consistent with his yards per carry, he's going to see hopefully some touchdowns. So that could benefit you. And with Mixon kind of being injured, will he play, will he not play? I don't want to have to deal with that. So he will be a sit for me. And if he plays, it'll make Giovanni Bernard less valuable, so he'll also be a bench for me. Next, we have the Dallas Cowboys and the Miami Dolphins. As I said in the previous video, get rid of all your Dolphins. So sit Fitztragic and Josh Rosen, Kalen Ballage, Kenyon Drake, sit everything. And quite opposite, start everything in Dallas. So Dak Prescott is like the number 3 quarterback right now, number 2 or 3, something like that. So he's doing really well, so he's definitely a start. Ezekiel is going to do crazy things, as he always does, especially against this Miami team. I think they're going to do fantastic things. So hopefully they can continue their winning ways and performing fantastically and keep it going. So Dak and Zeke will both be a start for me. Next we have the Denver Broncos and the Green Bay Packers. And Aaron Rodgers would be a start for me. I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers. You pretty much have to start him. He's one of those guys who's kind of on the border of, he's not a must start every week, but he's also not a person that you would often bench. So he's kind of teetering every once in a while on start or sit side. But this week he'll definitely be a start. The Broncos defense isn't scary, so I think he'll do well. As far as Flacco goes, he did do a bit better. His receivers did well, especially Emmanuel Sanders. But I don't see him doing well because the Packers defense is actually pretty good this season. So I would bench Flacco as far as the running backs go. We saw Aaron Jones finally almost have his come-out party last week. He did really well. It was exciting. Whenever they had turnovers for the Green Bay defense, the offense got to capitalize. Aaron Jones had a rushing touchdown, and it looked really good for him. They gave him the opportunity. So hopefully the opportunities he gets isn't only based on how close they are to the red zone because of defensive turnovers. So hopefully that won't be a thing that skews his opportunities. Hopefully he can see volume no matter what and keep the consistency going. So he'll definitely be a start for me. As far as the running backs in Denver, I would bench both of them. They're probably seeing like a 50-50 split between Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay. So don't really want to have anything to do with them. The only running back that I would start would be Aaron Jones. Sit Royce Freeman, sit Phillip Lindsay, also sit Jamal Williams because, as I said, Aaron Jones did well. So hopefully they don't think they'll need to use Williams that much. Next we have the Atlanta Falcons and the Indianapolis Colts. I would hopefully start Matt Ryan. He should do well. He threw so many picks last Monday night. It was ridiculous. He just slinging it, and then interception. So, I mean, hopefully one of those can go to Julio, Julio had 2 touchdowns, so he salvaged his game, which was nice, but Matty Ice just needs to stop hoping, trying to be Aaron Rodgers, throwing out a prayer and it not getting answered. So hopefully he doesn't be reckless like he has been. He did also throw 3 touchdowns, so hopefully that'll continue. So I'd start Matt Ryan. As far as Jacoby Brissett, he's still progressing, doing well, but as far as now would go, he would be a sit for me. Maybe later in the season when he's a bit more consistent, building up there, he'll be a start for me, but as of now, he'll be a sit. As far as the running backs go, Devonta Freeman had a decent day. Hopefully it continues. I'm hopeful. I like Devonta Freeman, as you know, so maybe he can eat against that Colts defense. And as far as Indianapolis, I would start Marlon Mack. I think he's going to do well. I'm having high hopes for him. The Atlanta defense is not that great, so he's definitely going to do well. As far as Ito Smith and Nyheim Hines, I would bench both of them, even though, as I've said in earlier videos about Nyheim Hines being a decent flex spot in PPR deep leagues, I wouldn't risk him, especially in a deeper league. If he doesn't perform well, that's even worse for your team. It's more detrimental. So I would just not even start him. Next we have hopefully the most exciting game of the entire week 3 games. We have the Baltimore Ravens going to the Kansas City Chiefs. Start both quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson is fantastic this season. Patrick Mahomes, as usual. It's crazy that you say Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and you talk more about Lamar Jackson, how good he's doing, rather than Patrick Mahomes. Because even though Patrick Mahomes is doing better, it's like, oh yeah, we expect that, so enough said about Patrick Mahomes. Now on to Lamar Jackson. So hopefully Lamar can keep it going. He has his weapons. He's using Hollywood and Mark Andrews so well. Ingram had that tiny bit of a scare on the sideline, but he came back in like nothing was wrong. So hopefully this continues. They have a fantastic game. The Ravens defense is decently good. Kansas City, not so much. So we might see a track meet. Who knows? Either way, it should definitely be a good game. I think they're going to show out. You start both quarterbacks, and then I would start Mark Ingram. I think he's going to do well. As far as the Kansas City backfield would go, the only guy I would consider starting is Darwin Thompson because Damian Williams has his knee injury and LaShawn McCoy has an ankle injury. So we're not sure if they'll play. If they'll see limited snaps. So hopefully that means that Darwin Thompson will see more of the workload so he could possibly see more volume. And that only means good things for him and his owners. So if he gets to see the workload, he can do it because that offense will produce no matter what. Next, we have the Oakland Raiders and the Minnesota Vikings. We can give Kirk Cousins another try because the Oakland defense is not great against quarterbacks. So hopefully that means that Diggs and Thielen will have good open slots for Kirk Cousins to throw into and not try to air it out, not do too much, not turn the ball over. He could be consistent, and he has the reliable receivers like we just talked about. So if he can get the ball to them in wide open spaces, he'll be fine. So he's a start. As far as Derek Carr goes, I would bench him. The Vikings defense is looking nice this season. They demolished Matty Ice in week 1. So last week it was Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers is arguably better than Matt Ryan. So that, like I said in other videos about going against one quarterback that skews your stats, it's not as reliable of stats whenever you go against that one really good guy. So I think that their defense is going to get to Carr, make him feel pressured. He'll start to panic, do crazy things, and not be an efficient and effective quarterback. So he'll definitely be a bench for me. As far as the running backs go, they're both a start. Josh Jacobs is doing well, but you'll have to monitor his groin issue because he kind of tweaked it a bit, and those type of injuries, especially like the upper leg, like hamstring, the groin area, start to linger and bother you throughout the season because they can't quite get fully healed the way they need to be. So hopefully that can just go away. He does proper rehabilitation and it's not a bother for him anymore, but it's something for you to look out for, so be cautious of that. As far as Dalvin Cook, must start. Dude is fantastic. He's been doing so well this season. He should keep it up as long as he stays healthy. That's the main thing. You see what he can do when he is healthy, so if he stays that way, I think he's going to continue to do what he's doing. So he's definitely a start. Next, we have the Detroit Lions visiting the Philadelphia Eagles. Quarterbacks, I would start Matt Stafford. He's doing well, as we all knew he would, even though, like I said before, last year he was injured, so he didn't have that great of a season. It was the only times he got below certain statistics his entire career. A lot of his weapons were injured, so they were really depleted, not going anywhere this season. I mean, I'm not sure if they're going anywhere this season, but they're doing a lot better because Kenny G finally had his good day. We'll talk about receivers in another video, but Stafford is a start. He's going to do well. He's going to progress again even more coming from that injury, so he's a start. As far as Carson Wentz goes, he is kind of a sit for me, but if you start him, I don't blame you. I mean, you probably got him in the late rounds, so you could possibly have a starter in front of him. But if you don't and he's your number one starter, then I wouldn't blame you if you would start him. But he came out of Monday night's game. He had a bit of a issue. His ribs and stuff were bothering him. He got speared a couple times. And Josh McCown had to come in for like one drive, well, most of a drive, and then Wentz came right back out and didn't do much in that red zone attempt. But he's kind of making me a bit nervous. I don't want him to try to throw and then, stretch out the ribs, injure them. They might start to bruise up, especially if he gets tackled and sacked a lot. So he'll be a sit, very cautious start if you need to. Next we have the Houston Texans traveling west to meet the LA Chargers. This should hopefully be a good game. Some decent defenses, pretty powerful offenses. So I would start both quarterbacks, even though Deshaun Watson had kind of a down week last week. It was against a decently good Titans defense. So hopefully it's a bounce back for him and he'll have more of like a week 1 performance, see a few touchdowns, maybe the D-hop, and then keep it going and be a bit more fluid in the pocket. But I feel like he's going to run around all over the place. He's like the most hit guy as far as quarterbacks in the league. So he's running for his life all the time. If they can't get people to block for him better than they have now, he's going to be another Andrew Luck retiring super early because of injuries. So until that happens, he'll be a star for me. As far as Phillip Rivers goes, he's done well. Even though he had limited resources last week, he's still targeting Keenan Allen. Austin Eckler did fantastic. So Phillip Rivers will be a star for me. As I just mentioned, Austin Eckler did fantastic. He's like the number 1 running back in fantasy right now, so he's obviously a start. Justin Jackson would be a bench because, as I said, Austin Eckler is doing so well. I don't see that they're going to be like, oh yeah, he's doing well, let's start someone else. They're not Matt Patricia or Adam Gase, so I don't think that they're going to put Austin Eckler on the bench and then come in with Justin Jackson for no reason. So Eckler would be an obvious start for me. And then Carlos Hyde, I would probably also start him. He had like 20 attempts for 90 yards last week. So if he can get 100 all-purpose yards, he'll be doing decently nice. As far as Duke Johnson Jr. goes, I would bench him. I'm not sure how well he'll be used, so it'll be safer for you and your team if you just don't have to worry about him and just sit him. Next we have the New Orleans Saints traveling to Seattle to go against the Seahawks. I unfortunately everyone, like most people, are upset. Drew Brees is out for 6 weeks, so that means Teddy Bridgewater is starting. Last week he didn't look very good against the Rams defense, but it was the Rams defense. He did have to come in. This week he got practice with the starters. He got more familiar, with the offenses. So hopefully he can perform better. He would still be a sit for me, but hopefully after this game he's a lot more comfortable and knows what to do, kind of acts more like Drew Brees. Drew is out, so he's going to hopefully mentor Bridgewater even more while he's out to try to get him to be the best he can be, try to get the best performance out of Teddy Bridgewater. So we'll see how that goes. Russell Wilson will be a start. I mean, going against the Saints defense, who are not particularly great against quarterbacks. They're one of the worst as far as the passing defense goes. Even though they got a couple turnovers, it's not looking too great for them. So Russell Wilson should have a really productive day. He's a start. I would start both Chris Carson and Alvin Kamara, but I'm not as excited as I would be if this was week 1. If you had Kamara and Carson on your team at the draft, you were pretty confident you had a nice team, but as of now, it's like, yeah, I like them, but, you're not as excited as you were. They'll still produce, but it might not be as much as you would expect, especially how the season started for them. As far as their backups, I would bench Latavius and Rashad Penny because I think that Carson and Kamara will do well, but not crazy good, and that's why I would bench their backups because If the starters aren't going to do that amazingly, then I don't expect the backups to do anything. Next game, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers traveling all the way west to go meet the San Francisco 49ers. Big Ben got hurt last week. He had his elbow surgery. He's out for the rest of the season. Mason Rudolph came in, looked decently well. Hopefully he can continue that, get better chemistry with the number ones, but I don't see that happening yet, so he would be a bench for me. I would sit him just until he can maybe get enough production under his belt to be a valuable starter. Hopefully he can target Vance Dance, because last week he came in halfway through the game and threw 2 touchdowns to Vance McDonald. So hopefully that makes Vance a bit more valuable, but we'll talk about tight ends in another video. As far as Mason Rudolph right now, he's a bench for me. On the other side, Jimmy Garoppolo had a very fantastic game last week. I expect that to continue, even though the Steelers recently got Minka Fitzpatrick. I'm not sure if he'll be able to start for this game, if they got him early enough in the week. He could, but I mean, it's learning a whole new scheme, this and that. So I don't know if he's going to be as super effective as he could be later on down the line. So Jimmy Garoppolo would be a start for me. As far as the running backs go, I would start both Matt Breida and Raheem Mostert. They both did well, even though Breida didn't see a touchdown. He had almost 100 yards. So they can both be effective in the run game. So that's why I would start both of them. Jeff Wilson, I would not start him. He'll be a sit for me because he's unreliable and inconsistent. He's too volatile with the touchdowns. He's very touchdown dependent. So he'll be a sit. As far as the Steelers, I would probably bench James Conner if I could, because his knee is bothering him. So if he plays, he won't be that effective. If he sits, he obviously will be not effective at all. So that could hopefully mean good things for Jalen Samuels. So if you're in deep leagues, Samuel could be a nice flex play for you. So I could see myself starting Jalen Samuels. For the second primetime game of the weekend, we have the LA Rams meeting the Cleveland Browns. This should also hopefully be a good game. Browns' defense has kind of been slipping as of late. They're getting dropped in all kinds of leagues. And then the Rams' defense is looking decently well. So we'll see how the defenses perform. I would start both quarterbacks. I'm thinking Baker can have a bounce back. He had a fantastic game. OBJ had that ridiculous career-long touchdown where he got the ball decently off the line and then took it himself, which is crazy because Baker will be credited for that same touchdown, but OBJ obviously did most of the work. Yeah, Baker saw him, threw it to him, but I mean, after OBJ touches the ball, it's all him. So hopefully we can see another bomb like that, another nice game. Hopefully Baker can not turn the ball over, not try to do too much like he did in the first game against the Titans, and stay calm, professional, do what he does, what he can do. He has the weapons. All he has to do is get it to him. And then for Jared Goff, he also has weapons. He did okay against the Saints last week, except for that fumble, which should have been a touchdown. Another story. But they're pressuring him, the defenses, and he's getting hit a decent amount of times. So if he can get the ball out, he'll be a lot more effective. He'll be a start for me if the offense can protect him on that line, because if they can't, he's going to have a rough day. Especially with Myles Garrett coming after him, it's going to be rough if that offensive line can't hold him. As far as the running backs go, Todd Gurley is a start. He's been looking decently well. Chubb is also a start. I like Nick Chubb a lot. I think these guys are both going to have really good games. At least double-digit points for both of them. They could each see a touchdown, at least 60 to 70 yards rushing, maybe a couple catches here and there. So I could see this game being very productive for both of those running backs. And then for another Monday night blunder of a primetime game, we have the Chicago Bears and the Washington Redskins. It's not going to be anything worth watching in my opinion, but it's still football, so I'm probably going to watch it. But as far as quarterbacks go, I have to bench Case Keenum. Even though he's doing well, he's making his weapons valuable, like his receivers. He's doing well in that, but his numbers on his own is just not good enough to be in the start category. As far as Mitchell Trubisky goes, he's another guy on the fence. If I had to, I would start him. He could do well, but I definitely would not blame you if you sat him. He's one of those guys, kind of like Cam Newton and Jameis Winston. On my last leg, if he doesn't perform well, I'll probably be done with him for the rest of the season. So he's a start with a lot of caution, and I wouldn't blame you if you sat him. As far as the running backs go, I would start Chris Thompson, especially in deep league PPR flex. He could be valuable. He could see some targets. I'm not sure if I would start Adrian Peterson. He would be a barely sit for me, but if you would start him, I could see the argument for that. So he's kind of either or for me, but leaning more towards the sit. As far as the Chicago backfield, I would love to start David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen. We're not sure what's going to happen. Hopefully they can see more production, but you never know what they're going to do. But as of now, I would have David Montgomery as a start. They're starting to see him be that premier back. They're starting to recognize it, let him have more opportunities and more touches. So hopefully that continues. So he'll be a start. Tariq Cohen will be a start with caution for me. I wouldn't blame you if you sat him, because especially in PPR, he could be of value to you. He's going to be that number 2 guy. Mike Davis, they've kind of slowly gotten away from him, so he'll obviously be a sit for me. If they continue to give Montgomery the ball, it'll be fantastic for you if you have him. He could see a lot of potential in the red zone. He could be busting out some 20-yard rushes into the end zone. So hopefully that happens. You never know. But those two will be a start for me. Mike Davis will be a sit. But those were my quarterback, running back start sits for week 3 games. Let me know what you think. If you have 2 guys that I said you should start or 2 guys that I said you should bench, let me know who those guys are. I can give you a decision on who I think would be a more effective starter on your team. So leave any of those in the comment section. As always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. As I said, leave all your questions, topic suggestions, comments, questions about who you should start, who you should sit. What are your opinions on these players that I mentioned? Leave that all in the comment section below. Remember that sports is supposed to be enjoyed, so please watch, tell someone about us, watch together, and grow as much as we can. Spread the word. In order to do that, you gotta smash that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, so we keep trying to give you as much content as possible to aid you in who you should start, who you should sit, the most effective and impactful lineup that you can set. That way you can win your game by as many points as possible. But lastly, I'll leave you with God bless America and God bless fantasy football. Take care.